I thought Christmas was about joy, about family, about presents. But for me, this past Christmas, it detonated. It ripped open an old wound and exposed a betrayal that had been festering for years, all because of an unexpected $10 million windfall. My name is Daniel, I'm 32, and this whole crazy journey began when I struck gold. What I really didn't see coming was how my brother, Jason, would react when he found out. See, Jason and we were never what you'd call close. He's 4 years older, always the one getting into trouble, always convinced the world owed him something. Growing up, our parents practically tied themselves in knots trying to keep him afloat. When he wrecked his car at 18, they drained their savings for a new one. He flunked out of college, they paid for him to try again, though he never did. And when he racked up tens of thousands in credit card debt, they refinanced their home to bail him out. Meanwhile, I learned early on that if I wanted anything, I had to earn it myself. I worked my way through college, lived in a tiny apartment, and took jobs I genuinely hated just to make ends meet. It wasn't glamorous, but it taught me to be resourceful. Then, about a year ago, I made a decision that changed absolutely everything. I won't bore you with the specifics, but let's just say I made an investment. And that investment paid off in a way I couldn't have even dreamed of. Suddenly, I was a millionaire. But here's the thing, I didn't tell a soul. I kept my small apartment. I kept driving my beat-up car. I even kept working, just scaled back to part-time. I wanted to be smart about it, make sure the money actually lasted. I wasn't about to become one of those people who blew everything in a year and ended up worse off. Which brings us to this past Christmas. Our family always gathered at my parents' house for the holidays. It was tradition. Mom would deck the house out with enough lights to rival a small city, Dad would make his legendary ham, and we'd all just pretend Jason wasn't the walking disaster he usually was. This year started just like any other. Dinner was chugging along, innocently enough, until the conversation drifted to money. My cousin Mark had just bought a house, and everyone was congratulating him. Jason, in his usual charming way, just scoffed and mumbled something about how some people get all the luck. I should have kept my mouth shut. I really should have. But for some reason, maybe just to contribute, I said, it's not always luck, Sometimes it's about making the right moves at the right time. Jason turned to me, an eyebrow raised. What's that supposed to mean? I shrugged. Just that smart financial decisions can make a big difference. He let out a short, hollow laugh. Yeah, like you'd know anything about that. I bit my tongue. I'd spent my entire life ignoring Jason's jabs. I wasn't about to start now. But then my dad chuckled, and that's when it all went sideways. Well, I don't know, Jason. I'd say Dan's done pretty well for himself this past year. Silence. Jason's head snapped toward me. What's he talking about? I swallowed, suddenly acutely aware that all eyes were on me. It's nothing, I said quickly. Just made some good investments, that's all. Jason narrowed his eyes. How good? I hesitated. My dad, in all his well-meaning but completely oblivious glory, answered for me. Dan got himself a nice little fortune now, didn't you, son? What is it, 10 million? I closed my eyes for a second, groaning internally. Jason's chair scraped against the floor as he leaned forward, his entire demeanor shifting. 10 million? You have $10 million. I forced a smile, trying to brush it off. It's not like I have it in cash, just sitting around. But Jason wasn't listening. His face was turning red, his jaw tightening. Are you kidding me? You've been sitting on $10 million this whole time while I've been struggling. Jason, no, seriously. No, seriously, he snapped, his voice rising. I've been working so hard. Have you? I asked, my voice dangerously calm. His eyes widened. What's that supposed to mean? I set my fork down, my appetite gone. Jason, I didn't win the lottery. I didn't get this handed to me. I made careful decisions. I worked hard. Oh, spare me the speech, he interrupted. You don't think I work hard? I said nothing, but we both knew the answer. Then he did something I'll never forget. He leaned back in his chair, crossed his arms, and said, "Well, if you have $10 million, you owe me half." I actually laughed. I couldn't help it, it was so absurd. "Owe you?" I repeated. "Why on earth would I owe you anything?" "Because we're family," he said, as if it was the most obvious thing in the world. "Because I've been struggling, and you've been sitting on a pile of cash, doing nothing." I shook my head in disbelief. "Jason, that's not how this works. I don't owe you anything." His face twisted in fury. "You wouldn't even have that money if Mom and Dad hadn't helped you with college." I clenched my fists under the table. "They didn't," I said evenly. "I worked my way through school. No one paid my tuition but me." That shut him up for a second. But then he scoffed. "Oh, come on. You wouldn't have even gotten into college if they hadn't given you a stable home. Everything you have is because of them, because of us. You think you got rich all on your own?" I stared at him, stunned. "Yes, Jason, that's exactly what I think." His chair scraped against the floor again as he pushed it back and stood up. "You know what?" he said, his voice shaking with rage. "You're a selfish, greedy little—" "Jason!" Mom cut in, her voice sharp. "Sit down." But he didn't. He was breathing hard now, his hands clenched at his sides. "I can't believe this. I've been drowning in debt, working dead-end jobs, barely making it, and you've just been hoarding all this money." My stomach turned. "Jason, I didn't tell you about my money because I knew you'd react like this." He let out a bitter laugh. "Oh, right. It's my fault you're a selfish—" "I got you a gift," I cut in, my voice quiet but firm. That stopped him. He frowned. "What?" I smiled, slow and deliberate. "You'll love it." His eyes narrowed. "What is it?" I leaned back in my chair, meeting his glare head-on. "You'll see." And with that, the entire table fell silent. Jason was fuming, my parents were tense, and I could feel the weight of everyone's stares. But I wasn't worried, because I had a plan. A plan that would make sure Jason never forgot this Christmas. Jason stood there for a moment, breathing heavily, his fists clenching and unclenching as he stared at me like I'd personally robbed him. I could almost see the gears turning in his head, trying to figure out if he should keep shouting or finally sit down. I didn't say anything else. I just kept my smile steady, knowing it would get under his skin more than anything. Mom, ever the peacemaker, reached for Jason's arm. "Sit down, honey," she said in that soft, pleading voice she always used when he got like this. "Let's just have a nice Christmas dinner." Jason pulled away from her touch. "A nice dinner?" he repeated with a laugh. "How am I supposed to sit here and have a nice dinner when my own brother is sitting on $10 million and acting like I don't deserve any of it?" Dad, who had been quiet until now, finally spoke. "Jason, enough." His voice was firm, the kind that always used to make us shut up when we were kids. But Jason was past that point. "No, not enough," he snapped, jabbing a finger in my direction. "He's been lying to us, keeping secrets. I mean, did you guys know? That? Did you know he was sitting on millions while we've been struggling?" Mom looked away, a flicker of guilt across her face. Of course she'd known. I had told her months ago, mostly because she worried about me constantly and I wanted to put her mind at ease. But I had also sworn her to secrecy, and to her credit, she'd kept her word. Jason noticed her reaction and let out a bitter laugh. "Unbelievable. So you did know." Dad sighed, rubbing a hand down his face. "Jason, this isn't your business." "Not my business?" Jason nearly shouted. "He's my brother. And he's supposed to help his family, not hoard everything for himself like some. Like some what?" I asked, my voice calm, measured. Jason's nostrils flared. Like some selfish, greedy. Careful, I warned. Jason's face twisted in rage, but before he could say anything else, Mom finally lost her patience. That is enough, she snapped, louder than I'd ever heard her before. This is Christmas. We are not doing this at the dinner table. Jason let out a scoff and shook his head. Fine, he muttered. But I'm not dropping this. He sat down roughly, his entire body tense with anger. For a moment, there was silence. The kind of silence that weighed heavy in the air, stretching across the table like a dark cloud. Finally, Mom cleared her throat and forced a smile. So, who wants more potatoes? No one answered. Dinner carried on in an awkward silence, with only the occasional clinking of forks against plates. Jason barely touched his food, too busy fuming in his seat. Every few minutes, he would glance at me, his expression dark and unreadable. I ignored him. Instead, I enjoyed my meal, savoring each bite, knowing what was coming. Because while Jason had been ranting about how I owed him, he hadn't realized one very important thing. I had planned for this. And when the time came to exchange gifts, Jason would get exactly what he deserved. The moment dinner ended, Mom practically leaped out of her chair. Let's do presents, she said, overly cheerful, as if she could force the holiday spirit back into the room. Dad gave her a look, like, really? But she ignored him, already heading toward the tree. I followed, keeping my expression neutral. Jason? He sat there for a moment, arms crossed, before finally pushing himself up with a huff. Yeah, he muttered. Let's see what my rich little brother got me. I smiled again. If only he knew. The presents were passed around. Mom got her usual candles and bath sets. Dad got a new fishing rod. My cousins unwrapped their gifts with excitement. And then finally, Mom reached under the tree and grabbed a small box wrapped in red paper. She turned to Jason and smiled. This one's from Daniel. Jason snatched it out of her hands, his eyes narrowing. A small box? He muttered. Seriously? Mom gave him a warning look, but he ignored her. Instead, he ripped off the paper, yanked open the lid, and froze. For a moment he just stared. Then his head snapped up. What is this? I leaned back, pretending to think. I think it's called a calculator. Jason's jaw tightened. Yeah, I can see that. Why would you give me a calculator? I shrugged. Because you clearly need help doing the math. Jason's face turned red, and I saw his hands clench around the box. You think this is funny? He hissed. A little, I admitted. Jason shot to his feet. You're a real piece of work, you know that? Jason, Mom started. No, he cut her off. This is a joke. He's a joke. Sitting on $10 million and all he gives me is a freaking calculator. I tilted my head. Would you prefer an abacus? That did it. Jason let out a yell of frustration and chucked the box across the room. It hit the floor with a thud, the calculator skidding across the hardwood. You think this is funny? He shouted. You think it's some big joke that your own brother is struggling while you live like a king? I folded my arms. Struggling, Jason? You live in Mom and Dad's house. You don't pay rent. And the last time you had a job, I was still in high school. Jason's face burned with rage. I've been trying to get back on my feet. I sighed, shaking my head. No, Jason. You've been waiting for someone else to lift you up. And I hate to break it to you, but I'm not that person. Silence. For a moment, Jason just stood there, breathing heavily, his fists clenched, his eyes burned with pure hatred. Then, without another word, he turned and stormed out of the house, slamming the door behind him. Mom let out a shaky breath. Daniel, was that really necessary? I bent down, picked up the calculator, and set it back on the table. Yes, I said simply. Dad just sighed, rubbing his temples. Christmas carried on, but the tension lingered in the air. And deep down, I knew this wasn't over. Because Jason wasn't the type to just let things go. He would be back. And when he came, I needed to be ready. The days after Christmas were eerily quiet. Jason hadn't called, texted, or even sent one of his usual passive-aggressive messages through Mom. I knew better than to believe he'd just let this go, but the silence made me uneasy. Mom was still trying to smooth things over. She called me the next day, her voice heavy with concern. "I think you should talk to Jason," she said. I sighed. "Mom, we did talk. He demanded half my money, threw a tantrum, and stormed out. I don't have anything else to say. He's your brother and—" Mom hesitated. "He's just going through a hard time." I almost laughed. When has Jason not been going through a hard time? And when has it ever been his fault? That shut her up for a second. I softened my tone. "Mom, I love you, but Jason's problems aren't mine to fix. I worked for what I have. I don't owe him anything." Mom sighed. "I know. I just wish. I don't know. I just hate seeing my boys fight." I hated it too. But I wasn't about to be bullied into giving Jason money just to make things peaceful. And Jason? He was far from done. It was New Year's Eve when he finally reappeared. I had just gotten home from grabbing dinner when my phone buzzed. "Jason, I'm coming over. We need to talk." I stared at the message, debating whether to respond. Before I could, a second one came through. "I'm serious. Be home." I rolled my eyes. Jason had spent years acting like he was the main character in everyone's lives, as if his demands were law and we were all just supporting cast members. Still, I was curious. So I waited. 30 minutes later, my doorbell rang. I opened it to find Jason standing there, hands stuffed in his jacket pockets, jaw tight. He looked exhausted, but there was something else in his expression, determination. I leaned against the doorframe. "Happy New Year." Jason didn't smile. "Can I come in?" I considered it. Finally, I stepped aside. "Sure." He walked in, glancing around. It was the first time he'd been to my place in over a year. Last time, he'd been unimpressed, complaining about how it was too nice for someone like me, as if I hadn't earned it. Now, he just sat on the couch, staring at the floor. I sat across from him, waiting. Jason let out a breath. "Look, I get that you're mad at me." I raised an eyebrow. "I'm not mad." "Whatever," he muttered. I need you to understand where I'm coming from." I said nothing. Jason clenched his jaw. "I've been struggling, Daniel. You know that. And then I find out my own brother has $10 million? Do you know how that feels?" I sighed. "Jason, I get that things haven't been easy for you. But my success isn't your failure." His eyes darkened. "It's easy for you to say that when you're the one with money." I shook my head. "This isn't about money, Jason. It's about you thinking you're entitled to it." Jason leaned forward. "I'm your brother. So family helps family." I exhaled slowly, keeping my voice calm. "Family also respects family." Jason scoffed. "And you respect me by throwing my struggles in my face? By humiliating me on Christmas?" I blinked. "You humiliated yourself, Jason. You threw a fit in front of the entire family because I wouldn't hand over millions of dollars like it was spare change." Jason's nostrils flared. "You don't get it." "I do get it," I said, leaning forward. "You want a shortcut. You want my money to fix your life instead of actually fixing it yourself." Jason shot up from the couch. "You think I'm lazy?" I just looked at him. Jason's hands curled into fists, and for a second, I thought he might actually swing at me. But then he just let out a humorless laugh. "You know what? Keep your stupid money." I shrugged. "I will." Jason stormed toward the door, but hesitated with his hand on the handle. "Don't come crying to me when you need my help one day." I snorted. I think I'll manage." And with that he left, slamming the door behind him. I sat back on the couch, rubbing my temples. Jason hadn't come over to apologize. He hadn't come over to make amends. He had come expecting me to cave. But I wasn't going to. Not now. Not ever. The next few weeks were quiet. Too quiet. Jason had stormed out of my apartment, but I knew him well enough to know he wouldn't just give up. He was stubborn, especially when it came to his own sense of entitlement. I went about my life as usual, throwing myself into work, hitting the gym, catching up with friends. But in the back of my mind, I was waiting for the next move. It came in the form of Mom. One afternoon, she called me, her voice hesitant. "Daniel, we need to talk." I sighed. "Is this about Jason?" She hesitated. He's really upset. He feels like you abandoned him." I pinched the bridge of my nose. "Mom, I didn't abandon him. He's a grown man. He's been an adult for over a decade. He made his own choices." Mom was quiet for a moment. "He's your brother, Daniel. I don't want to see my boys at odds like this." I let out a slow breath. "Mom, I love you, but Jason isn't just upset, he's acting entitled. I worked my way up. I earned my success, and he thinks he can just demand half of it because we share DNA. I know it's not fair," she admitted, "but he's in a bad place. He lost his job, his car broke down, and..." I cut her off. "Mom, what do any of that have to do with me? Did I fire him? Did I break his car? Did I make him ignore all the opportunities he's had?" Mom sighed. No buts," I said firmly. "I get it, you feel bad for him. But feeling bad for someone doesn't mean handing them money. Jason needs to learn to stand on his own 2 feet. I'm done being his safety net." She didn't respond for a long time. Finally, she said softly, "I just don't want to lose my family over this." I felt a pang of guilt. I didn't want that either. But Jason had put me in a position where the only way to keep the peace was to let him walk all over me, and I wasn't willing to do that. We ended the call on a tense note, and I could tell she was disappointed. But for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel guilty about standing my ground. Then the rumors started. It happened gradually. First, a few mutual friends stopped reaching out. Then I started getting weirdly cold responses from extended family members. It wasn't until my cousin Mark messaged me that I found out why. Mark texted, "Hey man, just wanted to check in. Are you seriously not helping Jason out?" I frowned at my phone. "Asterisk me?" Asterisk. Mark texted back, "Dude, he's telling everyone you're letting him rot, that he's on the verge of being homeless while you're sitting on $10 million, laughing about it." I stared at the message, stunned. "Jason is lying about me?" I replied. "Mark, that's not even remotely true. Jason's not homeless. He's still in his apartment. He's just mad I wouldn't give him half my money." Mark texted, "I figured there was more to the story. Just thought you should know. He's been talking to a lot of people." I clenched my jaw. Jason wasn't just upset, he was trying to turn people against me. And worse, it was working. I started noticing it more and more. People I'd known for years acting weird, sending me vague messages about doing the right thing. Even Mom was different, guilt-tripping me every chance she got. Jason was playing the victim, making me the villain. I could have just ignored it, let it blow over. But then I got a message from my Aunt Lisa. "Daniel," she texted, "I just wanted to reach out and say I'm so disappointed in you. Family comes first, and money isn't everything. If your brother is struggling, the least you can do is help him. We're all disgusted by how selfish you've become." I stared at my screen, my hands tightening into fists. That was it. That was the moment I decided. I wasn't just going to sit back and let Jason smear my name. I was going to teach him a lesson. The next time I saw my family was at a belated New Year's gathering. Jason, of course, was already there, laughing and chatting, completely at ease. He saw me walk in and smirked. Smirked like he thought he'd won. I kept my expression neutral as I greeted everyone, but inside, I was furious. Mom was the first to pull me aside. "I'm so glad you came," she said, looking relieved. "Maybe you and Jason can finally—" I cut her off gently. "Mom, I'll talk to him, but first, I have something to say." I stepped into the main living room, clearing my throat. "Hey, everyone, can I have a minute?" The chatter died down, and all eyes turned to me. Jason looked wary. I smiled. "I just wanted to address something that I know has been going around. I've been hearing some interesting stories about myself lately. Apparently, I'm a heartless millionaire who's letting my own brother suffer while I hoard all my wealth." A few people shifted uncomfortably. I continued, my voice calm. "So, let me clear the air. Jason, have I ever said you couldn't stay with me if you were actually homeless?" Jason's face twitched. No." I cut in smoothly. "I haven't. Because you're not homeless. You still have an apartment. You still have food on your table. You still have a way to get around. You're just mad I wouldn't give you half of what I earned." A few people murmured, exchanging glances. Jason scoffed, trying to save face. "That's not the point." "That is the point." I interrupted, my voice sharp. "You spun this whole sob story about how I abandoned you, but the truth? You never wanted help. You wanted a handout. And when I wouldn't cave, you decided to turn our family against me." Jason's face turned red. "That's not true." I smiled coldly. "Then tell me, Jason, if I suddenly offered you a job, a real one, with good pay and stability, would you take it?" Silence. Jason's lips pressed together, his eyes darting around. Everyone was watching, waiting. Mom looked between us, realization dawning. Jason finally muttered, "That's not the point." I nodded, turning to the rest of the family. "There you go. Jason doesn't want to work for anything. He just wants easy money. And I'm not going to apologize for not handing him something he didn't earn." The room was dead silent. Jason stood there, fists clenched. But for once, he had nothing to say. That was the last time Jason ever tried to guilt me into giving him money. I won't lie, things were weird with my family for a while. Some people still believed Jason's version of events, and others stayed neutral. But over time, as Jason continued his pattern of bad decisions, more and more people saw the truth. I never cut him off completely, I wasn't cruel. But I set firm boundaries. No more money, no more handouts. If he needed actual help, I'd be there. But if he just wanted a free ride, I was done. And honestly, it was the best decision I ever made for both of us. It took a Christmas explosion, but I finally realized that sometimes the hardest truths are the kindest gifts you can give.